Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Buddy Study Group for Worksite Solutions. And we have a new product alert. I wish I had a red little siren light behind me, but I think for us, we have to have a decently high standard to start really building a session around a specific carrier. So this is definitely a good time to introduce you to Aflac's new group long-term care product. It is a term to 120 with long-term care. We're going to do as deep of a dive as we can because this product is still very, very new and it's built in interesting ways in some respects. So just like with any product, we're still trying to get our arms around it completely, get a 100% understanding of how it works. We are going to give you our best estimates in areas where we can. But of course, we're going to continue doing research. So we obviously encourage you that if you got interest in the product, do your own research alongside us. We are happy to collaborate to have this group really get to a point of having the best understanding of the product so you can move quick, right? New product releases are always a pretty fantastic way to um, capitalize on that new interest. And if you're working with groups and they haven't sold yet, this might be a good one to go back and revisit. So what I want to do is just take you through some introductory pieces here, real quick as Mark dips out and in. Let's see. I'm going to take you through a couple of slides that we have from Aflac, and that'll help us summarize what we've got going on here, what we're dealing with. I mean, one of the big things, right? Just soft pieces to this. Aflac has tremendous name recognition, right? They've done a lot of advertising over the years. Many have thought of them as more of like an accident carrier, a bit more of the peripheral products. So entry into the long-term care industry is a pretty big deal from our perspective to see them entering when they don't have a ton of experience as a carrier. They have brought in a number of high-powered long-term care professionals, people who have built products, people who have managed and sold these products before in order to come up with this offering. So it's not as if there's no experience at the table. It's just Aflac's experience in selling long-term care is limited to this point. So term to 120. What a shocker, right? The carriers that really are getting off the ground and getting rolling in their entry into this market right now are trying to do so through products on a term life chassis. Uh, Number one, due to the amount of demand we've seen in the market for these products for a couple of reasons, right? Um, the term chassis, even though it is kind of like a perm term hybrid, is quite affordable and quite attractive, right? We don't have to worry about messing around with cash value, anything of that nature. So we're dealing with a plan that is generally more affordable. Also, term life is just recognizable. Even some of the high-powered financial talking heads are always saying, look at term, look at term, look at term. Don't look at things like whole life and universal life when you can look at term and invest the difference, right? There's just a lot of stigma out there that works in term's favor. And groups in general are very familiar with offering term life as an employee benefit, whether employer paid or not. So, no surprise to really see there. 7702B, long-term care rider, which is always good to see. Just takes the guesswork out of, how does the long-term care benefit work? Obviously, it's going to have a lot of what you know and love from other long-term care products like it in the market. Fully portable. We've got guaranteed issue underwriting available. I think term also is very Simple to implement into many enrollment platforms. That's another thing I forgot to mention. There is inflation protection. God, I think we could do a whole study group session, guys, on how the inflation protection benefit works. When we've got Mark back with us in the world of the living, we'll peel back the layers of that onion.
I've got my
Um,
phone,
oh, okay.
so whenever you
Um,
want.
all right. But here are some of the basics, and you're going to see this in line with, again, a lot of the standards that other carriers are really setting for these products. This is actually the first term product that goes to 120 instead of 121 or 100. So I don't know how consequential that is in any way, shape, or form, but it was interesting to me. The issue ages for employee and spouse are ages 18 to 70. Again, that's pretty standard, I would say. Um, 5-year age bands on the pricing as of right now, which is something that is distinct. Obviously, the lower ends of those age bands um, are not served as well as people who are at the upper level of the age bands. And I think there are going to be options for just issue age pricing. So we're continuing to look into that. Premiums and benefits are guaranteed. I love an easy story to tell. So to that respect, um, that's a really great thing they have going for them. Whoop, sorry, no cash values, fully portable. Talked about the enrollment platform administration, 7702B qualified. We are already seeing these underwriting tiers changing, especially with respect to the smaller groups. Let me blow this up just a little bit. But this is what they came with out of the box. 100 to 499 lives was 50,000 guaranteed issue. We are already starting to see 100,000 for that group size. For larger group sizes, we're seeing this pretty consistently right now. Groups from 500 to 999 lives are getting 100,000. 1,000 plus lives are getting 150,000, and potentially up depending on the group, right? I mean, 1,000 plus includes a ton of groups. So you could have a 30,000 life group that potentially, exceeds that. We'll have to see that kind of play out with just empirical data, sending in proposals on groups. But like I said, we're starting to see this improve already. 500 to 99 lives coming away with 100,000 GI, in my opinion, is not going to be as competitive as some of the other carriers. We see definitely with the standard, we're seeing 150,000 GI for those group sizes. Um, and I just think in our experience that might be a little difficult to compete at that level. But again, brand new product, they have time to shift. Um, Spouse GI up to 50% of the employee guaranteed issue to a maximum of 50,000. If that sounds familiar to you, this is what Chubb does for their spouse SI. So that was interesting for me to be able to see. I like spouse GI. We're seeing more and more products hit the market with spouse GI. It does get asked about a lot. It's just nice to know that even spouses won't be left out because if we do spouse SI only, there is a chance that you may have somebody walk away with no product. So good that we're avoiding that. Um, and then you see any carrier is going to write this negotiable on a case by case basis. So these are not set in stone, obviously, these tiers here. And what we have seen are multi-year GI offers so far from early proposals we've gotten. So generally that's a 3-year period, three GI periods, one per year. And what I have seen from how they treat that is if you purchase something in the first enrollment, you have the ability to purchase up to 50% of what you purchased in the first enrollment. So just to give you an example, if I am an employee, I saw the offer first time around, I purchased a $50,000 death benefit. I can purchase an extra 25,000 GI in the next GI period. So half of what you purchased before is what we're seeing so far for the rules. And again, we're seeing that at a 3-year term. This also signals to me just from reading through that information that if you've seen the offer once, get yourself something, right? 50% of zero is zero. I'm not sure exactly how they will treat that if they have like a floor minimum, but right now I'm assuming 50% of zero is zero. So if you've seen the offer, don't purchase anything. You will not have GI the next time around. Again, not set in stone. I'll need some interpretation on that from the carrier, but that's how I choose to interpret it.
Yeah, and what
There
we're
is,
finding too, Jason,
Mhm.
with most of the carriers is if you hit the minimum participation, they'll usually be open to having you request another GI period the following year.
Yeah,
So that's what I've been recommending to clients, which I like because you can tell them we need to hit this minimum and, don't have people wait for the next enrollment because there are no guarantees in this world. Even that they might change their pricing or their products, in the future based on the experience that they have. But I think they've been pretty open so far. If they're really aggressive and trying to get into the market, they're not trying to lose clients by closing the window. As long as they're having good enrollments, I think they'll continue to want to support it.
yeah, that's good sentiment, Mark. And that is, I would say, the more likely scenario. If you do a good job the first time around with the enrollment as a whole, you could get a GI for the whole group unconditionally the next time around. But in the nature of being as conservative as possible, I'll try to just give ground floor um, rules where I see them as I interpret them. This one is probably the biggest distinguisher I have seen so far. We'll get into inflation protection again. That's got to be its own block. I'll say that simple inflation protection is being offered in this case. You're not going to see a 5% compound inflation protection benefit. You're not going to see completely uncapped benefit growth. It is a much more reined in offering of inflation protection, but it's interesting. The professional care requirement is very, very interesting. So I'm just going to read this paragraph verbatim. With Aflac, insureds are eligible for full LTC benefits regardless of where they receive care or who provides the care. We treat home-based care and informal caregiving the same as professional settings and paid caregivers. Other carriers require a minimum level, yada, yada. What this is saying is that Aflac is going to offer the ability of true cash indemnity in this case, allowing informal care to count as professional home health care or any facility care. Now, we, like the last sentence that I yada yada away, is trying to say we've seen this with, say, Trustmark, but only at half the acceleration amount available for informal care. So say you had a 4% acceleration, it's a 2% acceleration for informal care. To have the leash let off for full informal care is pretty awesome to see as far as I'm concerned. And, in some cases, that could be a case winner. It's not that carriers are overly restrictive about the professional care amount you need to receive. Like, for example, the standards threshold is 2 hours of professional care every month to qualify for the indemnity long-term care benefit. But again, that is another thing to explain. This is an easy story to tell. So I'm going to give that advantage to Aflac. I really like that about the product. And we're seeing this more and more in the market every day too. Increased acceleration amounts. So Aflac is going to offer 4, 6, or 8% acceleration right out of the box. I have not done any investigation yet on the additional amounts on a custom basis. I would assume you would have to send them a pretty darn nice group, but it's good to see carriers looking at higher acceleration amounts. Greater ability for clients to use more of their long-term care benefit before they pass away. Always a good thing as far as I'm concerned. And this one also needs a little bit more dissection, but what Aflac is, really communicating here is that time of claim, there are options for periodic payments. So your traditional monthly long-term care benefit or a one-time lump sum payment. I believe there is some sort of cap or limiter on the total amount of benefit you can receive if you take the lump sum, but intriguing nonetheless. And again, spouse GI, very, very nice to see. No benefit reduction. They're basically saying, take that trust mark, take that standard term to 100, whatever it may be. Um, Completely guaranteed premiums and benefits is a nice sentence to be able to say. 100% restoration is available. So again, no reduced amount. Um, and the rest we've kind of already covered with the billing standpoint, enrollment platform standpoint, spoken for in 7702B long-term care. I will say for groups, if you have 25 distinct individuals paying premiums, that actually triggers eligibility for ACH billing, which is nice. We get a little bit of stricter limits from other carriers on what we can actually do to offer ACH billing in some cases, especially with smaller groups. So it's nice to see there. Um, I am going to assume that we are all decently versed enough to know the power of 7702B LTC and what it does, and I can kind of gloss this a little bit. Um, 7702B long-term care is important, right? State payroll tax programs, if we ever see another one come around, with a strict definition of what qualifies as creditable coverage, what qualifies as long-term care. If they come out and say 101G won't count, this will be an eligible product for those lists. If they choose to initiate separately identifiable long-term care premiums, and we have 7702B LTC, it means we have some tax benefits there for business owners, for HSA owners, and so on and so forth. Um, as quick of a crash course as I can give you as to why I like to see 7702B long-term care.
Hey, Jason.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Mark in the chat had asked actually about that ability to do the HSA funding. And we haven't specifically talked to Aflac about that just yet, but it's something that's on our wish list to talk to them about. But we did talk to Trustmark last week when we were at their home office, and they are starting to look into that, which is a good sign because a lot of them, look towards Trustmark as the bellwether. Um, and competitively, it would make sense for them to do this since there's no cost. It's really just an extra benefit that might make them more competitive with clients. So I would say stay tuned.
For
If they
sure.
do separate the premium, I would expect it to be less than half of the premium that you can deduct. So maybe like 25 to 40% in
Yep.
that range is what we're seeing. So it's not going to be a complete wow factor like a standalone product would be, but it's definitely a nice to have feature and a good talking point, especially to encourage employer funding. The HSA one I think is useful in the work site as well, but we haven't seen as much take up on that as we have with the employer funding because you also have to think about the HSA administration, which can make it a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, good points, Mark. And I think in Trustmark's case, it is simply a matter of being able to break out that premium and provide it at the time it needs to be provided, right? So when we are looking at employer funded cases, being able to pull that out for each employee being funded. Is that right? I don't think there are any other major hurdles. It's just that logistical hurdle of being able to break out that premium specifically in cases that it's needed for.
Yeah, that's the main thing. There's something else that you have to potentially do after the policy's issued that the carriers may have to support, but it's more administrative to your point, Jason, than it is like anything that creates like explicit costs.
Gonna be honest, guys, I'm straight up not gonna use this slide to explain the inflation protection to you. It is not worth it. We have a plan design calculator here. that we have like an Excel version of. We are also building all of the Aflac plan designs into our quick quote calculator. So you will have those in your hands soon. There will be one pagers available in Product Buddy soon. Just working through a few specific things. One quoting quirk that I will let you all know of, because of the way their inflation protection works and because of just the rules they've set, restoration and inflation protection cannot be quoted together. Uh, Still trying to investigate exactly why that is the case, but between our kind of favorite benefits, extension of benefits, restoration of benefits, and inflation protection, you can have a couple of combos. You can have extension and restoration together, which is fine. You can have extension and inflation together, and you can have restoration on its own, extension on its own, inflation on its own. Okay, so the only real package that is not available to us is having all three at once or having the combination of restoration and inflation. Okay, so that's an important piece to note because I know we are generally always quoting extension and restoration when we don't have inflation. The other carrier that does have inflation, the standard, we can quote all three. So that will be something we haven't seen before from a quoting perspective. And again, the acceleration amounts are workable. So we have to kind of look into the pricing of 4 versus 6 versus 8% acceleration and what combination of benefits, because we're kind of having to tinker around with these different plan designs. We are still starting, we're still trying to figure out what design we like best. But in our minds right now, we're looking at the extension and restoration and extension plus inflation as kind of the two top plan design combos.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Mark, as far as this goes, before we get into inflation protection and some other things?
Yeah, and I don't want to steal your thunder on that, but I think the easiest way to think about it, because it is a little bit quirky and a little bit more different than the other carriers, is just think of, you have 100,000 of face amount that you can accelerate, and that's like your first pool, one times. You can add the extension, um, which adds two times, and you can add either the restoration or the inflation, which gives you three times. So just think of the inflation as like almost like a separate bucket of money to get triple what your initial election is. In terms of pricing, having looked at, some of those samples with you, Jason, I think I would I would generally choose by default the 6% acceleration with the extension and inflation to get the three times and make it purely long-term care, kind of like our individual hybrids, where if you don't use the long-term care, you get the death benefit. But if you use the long-term care, you just get the three times for your long-term care, which is, I think, what most clients, that are looking for a long-term care first program are looking for. I
Yeah.
do get a lot of positivity, and you were kind of alluding to this with other carriers that have both the extension and the restoration. And the standard also adds inflation on top of that. So they do have, kind of the benefit all of those options to some degree. But when you're thinking about this inflation, it's not going to like drive a much higher monthly benefit for reasons that you might go into in terms of how the inflation works. It's more to get that extra pool. It's really to extend that total benefit. And I think what Aflac is signaling is they're comfortable competing with inflation, but they want to cap their risk,
Yeah.
which I think makes a lot of sense in this market with the guaranteed issue underwriting. So I think it's a smart way to offer it, and it is differentiated because very few of the group carriers have inflation outside of the standard.
Yeah. It's what I give them credit for, and we'll just go through states, a couple other things before we go fully into it. But it feels like carriers are either just going all the way with inflation, um, being too afraid and unwilling to put some sort of inflation protection in there that is responsible. and nothing in the middle. So I find Aflac is right in the middle. They're trying to have inflation protection. They see it as very important. Obviously, people building this product are aware that many employees ask about it, especially the sharp ones who know long-term care and long-term care insurance. Um, so I appreciate them trying to find an agreeable way to offer it. But just quick over to state availability. Guys, I'm just going to say don't worry about the lime greens for the time being. Treat those as the same color green. Um, Blue states, we don't have availability in yet. So that's California, New York, Montana. Big surprise there. Utah. Illinois was pretty interesting. Still currently in filing. Virginia, North Carolina, Massachusetts, and Vermont are no surprise. Indiana, Hawaii, Maryland. So those are our states where we're not available yet, but a pretty good roster right out of the box of availability, which I always enjoy. And I'm sure a few of these will be coming into the fold soon. So just wanted to give you a shout for that. Um,
And Jason, I'll mention just a couple of quick
yeah,
sweet spots. There are certain carriers that limit their LTC in Texas and Florida. So it's good to see we have those states, big states, obviously, with what I believe is the full product, although you'll have to correct me if you know of any state variations.
we got to dive pretty deep. A lot of where we get those sort of nitty-gritty pieces of information is really from running proposals and seeing what they turn out to be. But I think we have a proposal from Texas already that showed us
Yeah.
full availability. Florida is jury's still out,
Okay. Thanks for keeping me honest there.
of course. Let me pull up the calculator real quick. This is our internal version where we kind of stage everything. Um, Let me see. It would have helped if I had this ready. Here we go. So again, this is an idea of what you will see when released to Quick Quote, so we can dive into a few things. Mark, where would you like to start with? Because I actually would really appreciate you stealing my thunder here and there on a couple of these things.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
I
let's do
will.
let's do the one we recommended with the extension and inflation.
Okay. So
Okay.
again, this is going to be extension of benefits, no restoration, and inflation protection, which is 4% simple
So
inflation
do me
protection.
so I'll have you, yeah, do me a favor, run the 100,000. I'm not seeing your left hand side of my screen. Hold on, I'm on my phone though. Let me see if I can turn it. And then do if you claim at and start at if you claim at 45, just so we can kind of see it from the start.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Good point.
Okay, now I can see everything. All right, so just looking at the product from a basic level, we have 100,000 of death benefit. We have the extension, which is going to double that to 200,000 max LTC benefit. You see on the right hand side. Now, like we talked about, the inflation is the way to think of it is up to another $100,000 of extra pool, which you earn at a certain percentage. Now, the quirky thing about the inflation is that when you extend the benefit, the inflation gets cut in half. So it's 2% when it has the extension. At least that's how I'm explaining it now. So when you go out 25 years, so let's do age 70, you'll see the monthly benefit increases to 9,000 and you get that full $100,000 of extra benefit. And
This is
so
our
to me
ceiling, right?
yeah, kind of the cap benefit. So this is kind of what I would show as like a starting point. You can also do age 80 or others, but you're not going to get a higher benefit. I wouldn't necessarily do that on this
Yeah.
calculator, but you're not going to get a higher benefit. It's going to stay the same after 25 years post post issue. So we can see $150 a month premium, like very affordable premium, just like the other carriers, very competitive. We're looking at Trustmark, Chubb, Standard. They're right in the same price range, within, I would say, 10% or so of each other here. Total premiums 45,000. And then our leverage, right? For every dollar of premium, 6.6 times LTC benefits. The one thing I really like about the Aflac is most of the other carriers are giving you 2 times for the long-term care, and then they're giving you an extra restoration, which is either a third or up to 100%, which gives you that third pool, that three times. Whereas this is purely three times for long-term care. And I think that is can be positioned more attractively than the two times for long-term care that the other carriers are giving you. The other thing I like about this is they used a structure where the older ages are relatively less expensive than some of the other carriers. So if you
Yep.
go up to age 55, 65, like with standard, we'll see those rates double every 10 years. And you'll notice that here, while it is higher, it's not nearly double. So as we get to like executive carve out groups, that have like the older employees typically 50 to 65, kind of that sweet spot for long-term care, even up to age 70. I do think you're going to see more competitive pricing with Aflac, relatively speaking. Whereas younger groups probably are going to see better pricing with companies like the Standard, because they tend to have steeper, uh, like it's a steeper curve as you get older. So it's
Yeah,
also
what
cheaper as
was
you get
that?
older.
Let me just go back and just do
Hmm.
some mental math real quick.
Hmm.
151 to 55, it was 248. Is that like 66% extra? Am
Yeah, something
I
like that.
way
Exactly.
off? Okay.
No, no, that's good math. You get actuary points for that.
Those are my first ever actuary points, guys. It's a great day for me. Um, yeah, so I think the for the older age groups, you're actually going to see the comparison being Life Plus Care versus Aflac looking very, very similar. And we can compare plans if we would like to, but the
Yeah, try,
problem
try
with
that. Try that.
comparison here is that the
Okay.
products aren't going to function exactly the same. But what would you like me to
Okay.
compare it to?
Yeah, try the Trustmark Life Plus Care because I'm just
Okay.
curious. Always dangerous to do things you haven't tried, but let's do it because we're amongst friends.
That's right.
Yeah, do the death benefit higher in that one too. So yeah, you're right. It's a little bit going to be a little bit off because of the third. It decreases the death benefit by a third for the Trustmark, but you kind of get the picture, right? Like competitive pricing to Trustmark, more leverage at this age. So I would pick, an Aflac, versus a Life Plus Care with this particular structure. Now they also give you different rate classes with Life Plus Care, so it's not necessarily like always going to be this particular pricing. So make sure you
Right.
quote your groups. But
We're showing a
these are
conservative rate class. And one
yeah,
thing extra, Mark, here is this is really a measure of total benefit, including death benefit. This is a measure of long-term care, right?
correct.
So this is long-term care forward in a different way than we've ever seen. Obviously, there's no restoration safety net, so you are giving up the hedge, right, to have more overall long-term care benefit.
Try also the standard one without the inflation, the term life without the inflation. We'll just see because so again, very similar-ish, right? But more LTC with the Aflac side, a little bit lower premium on the standard because it's term to 100 versus term to 120. But again, like we said, these are all kind of within 10% of each other or so on pricing. So I would definitely quote all of these carriers on the groups, that qualify. And as you get younger, I think the standard's going to look better. Maybe Trustmark's going to look a little better, but Aflac definitely priced it well in these target age ranges that we see a lot with the executives.
100%. We can also take a look if we'd like at the, well, extension restoration. So given the tinkerer's nature of this product, we still have to work on creating a couple of different plan designs, but we need to have a 6% acceleration version of this extension plus restoration. Let's just assume a couple extra bucks a month in premium for that 6% acceleration. And we're looking pretty darn similar here as well,
Yeah.
if we are not looking at inflation protection, right? So this is stacked up kind of apples to apples. No inflation
Mhm.
on the standard, no inflation on Aflac. Again, that just pretend that 4 is a 6 and maybe the 224 is like a 227, 228. But
Yeah.
very, very interesting to see how competitively in line it is when you stack these plans up.
Yeah, when you look at this, you're not going to be choosing necessarily based on pricing when it's this close.
Right.
So, yeah, as long as it's in that competitive range, I think it's a solid A tier product that's going to have a lot of opportunities, and a
But
lot of
when
it's
you're
going to be
viewing
based
it like
on.
this, Mark, that
Mhm.
is actually where Aflac has positioned themselves well. If we can come in with the rest of the pack and we're offering 100% informal care and we are offering, 7702B long-term care when stacked next to 101Gs that just have similar contract language to 7702B or identical, um,
Mhm.
those can be key competitive advantages.
Yeah, sometimes it's going to come down to, what GI we can get on the offers. I know initially when we saw the presentation that you showed, Jason, those GIs were a lot lower than we were seeing with other carriers, but
Yep.
part of that was also just building the relationship with Aflac and getting into their preferred underwriting tier, given that they're comfortable with the risk that you're bringing them. So we had to have had some positive conversations recently about upping those. So
Yep.
again, you can't they're not set in stone, but definitely they're, here's what we're comfortable with out of the gate with a broker we've never worked with.
Yep.
And you're going to run into other issues we've already, seen like clients that have either a very positive background with Aflac or a negative background with Aflac. And, because they work with an Aflac broker or have had other voluntary products before. There's a lot of nuance to it, but definitely a A+ carrier, good reputation in general, and one of the leaders in this, voluntary benefits worksite space.
100%. And we haven't seen anything as of yet on any sort of required bundling with Aflac VB products. So at the moment, this is long-term care for long-term care's sake. I don't want to just, you know, release the hounds. We have had some conversations with them about some non-employer groups. Again, there's no sort of finished progress on any of them, but they are listening to conversations we are bringing to them about non-employer groups. Take that literally. They have an ear open. Their team is having dialogues with us on those. So that is better than saying, don't even try it, buddy. So, you can always be happy with that. A listening ear is way better than a closed mind. Anything else that you want to mention about Aflac on this run through, Mark? I know this is, going to set us up for a deeper dive later when we've got a lot of the resources released and we continue to get our arms around it. But anything you want to mention there?
Um, One thing that you pointed out, but I want to kind of emphasize it is there is a big jump from indemnity to a true cash indemnity style plan, and I know a lot of you LTC specialists in the audience here understand the value of being able to work with any caregiver that you need as long as you meet the eligibility requirements to of six or severe cognitive. So I think that's a big strength that isn't going to be on the spreadsheets or necessarily even on the proposals. So keep that one in mind. Um, you mentioned, Jason, they haven't been in long-term care before. I think that's true on the worksite side, to my knowledge, but actually they've had an individual product, standalone product in the past. It just didn't have a lot of sales, so not that well known. But they have been in long-term care, so I think from that perspective, that's a good thing. They've seen what's happened there and rate increases, and they've still come out with a very compelling, competitive product. So I like carriers, that have the experience
Yeah.
coming back
Oh,
in.
and Mark, Steve just asked about participation requirements. It's probably going to vary group to group, but we're seeing on proposals right now 10%.
Yeah. And again, a lot of it is going to involve, just like it always does for us, whether you have employer funding, because then that's more trivial. If it's all voluntary, we'd be careful about those groups, just like any other carrier, because it's hard to get participation for groups, under 500 or 1,000 without any funding at all. So I would stick to the same guidelines as we always do with any of the products, which is lean towards getting either a base plan, which is very popular, or some type of carve out for at least a few of the executives, because that makes a big difference on the voluntary participation you will get.
And just gets you automatic contribution toward that 10%, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
One of the things recently, I think you were kind of alluding to this, is we have shopped a couple of association non-traditional employers with Aflac, and they seem to be willing to explore that with us. So that's a good sign that they're not coming in and just saying, this is all we're going to offer it to large employers and that's it.
get
And
lost.
also asked them about doing smaller employers with employer funding, and they seem to be open to that as well. Although they're going to keep to 100 employee minimum. If you go down to like 25 and they're all funded, I think they'll consider those types of cases too, just like we're seeing now with Trustmark and Standard and Transamerica.
Yeah. When we say they are open to something, that means absolutely nothing set in stone yet. We don't even have existing precedents at this moment, but conversations are being entertained to move toward that direction. So, again, a lot of this is going to take time to prove out empirically, is going to require some independent research. We're already doing a heck of a lot of it. Feel free to let us know if there's anything that you find out about in the tea leaves as you're doing your own research. But this will set us up for a deeper dive where we can put some definites on some of these conditional items and items that are just conversation level right now. Um, but I think we've gotten out everything we wanted to about the product for a kind of preview. I feel pretty good that we were able to cover a lot of the spectrum of what Aflac is offering and able to do in this market. I think it is a very, very welcome, um, bit of competition for the other carriers that are out there right now. It's a good standard for a carrier that is entering. Mark, do we know anything about the commission levels?
Yes, they're very competitive to the other carriers. So let's say you're using their term product. Assume that the same commission for Aflac as a Trustmark or Standard or Chubb term product.
Perfect.
They've all kind of copied each other on that.
Anybody else have any questions for now? Or Gretchen, I saw you came
I have
off
a
mute. Yeah,
question.
and I've been
Yeah.
holding you there forever. Sorry.
That's all right. When do you expect Aflac to be part of Quick Quote and Product Buddy? Any idea?
Probably
I don't
next
want to
week.
put you on the spot, but I'm gonna.
Probably next week with
Oh,
initial pieces.
right.
So there'll be a lot of adjustment. We're gonna work on cases and find that in Idaho, there's this really weird way the product has to work, and those will all have to prove themselves out in time. So Product Buddy will be filled with rather general one-pagers. Quick quote plan designs, same way. We're going through a big planned overhaul of Product Buddy and Quick Quote in general that I think you all are going to love. I love just talking about it when we plan it. That will help sort through a lot of those things quicker, give you more control over what you present, things of that nature. But for right now, we're with the kind of static PDFs that I cook over the oven myself and Kaiva helps kind of distribute out into the tool. So it will start general and it'll start with just a couple of plan designs and we'll eventually get more state specific, state accurate with time. Product Buddy will be able to sort out where the product is available and where it isn't for the time being as soon as we update that though. So the filtering you will be able to be confident in.
Awesome.
I love new carriers. It's like one of my favorite things about being in this industry is just give me all of your stuff. I'm going to read all of your stuff and we're going to come back with questions. And you guys might not even know the answer to some of these questions. So it is a nice little delicate back and forth dance with the carrier. But as always, the reason we do these is to give you the news we have the moment we get it and not a moment later, hopefully. So. Appreciate you guys being here. Again, we got a pretty thin crew because everybody's starting their 4th of July vacations early, but you guys are the few that proud and you get gold stars from us. So I hope you guys have a wonderful Independence Day weekend and take some time to enjoy the outside with your loved ones. And we will see you here this time next week. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.